So you grew up as a black child raised by white people, much like Colin Kaepernick,
Yes.
much like Rachel Norlinger,
Yes.
and a few other people that I know.
Yes.
What was that journey?
Well, it was one filled with lots of complexity. And it was sort of started, the pathway to it was one which was like, let's not recognize this. Even the agency that adopted
Okay, back
me.
up. How did you end up in the home of these white people?
Oh, well.
Your parents.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
My parents had 3 children.
Okay.
They were married, had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. They wanted another girl. They wanted another child. And the way that you engineered having another girl specifically was really to adopt one, right? We didn't have the advances we have in technology today that we can order that up genetically. So they said, we'll take any child. We'll take a child who has some medical issues. We'll take a child who's of a different race. They didn't see color was their feeling. And that's how I joined their family. I mean, before that I was born, right?
I got that.
Before that I was
Right.
relinquished by my mother of origin, or my birth mother. She had 3 children already. She was in her 30s. Didn't feel like she could parent at that point.
Was she black or white?
She was white,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was put in temporary foster care while she decided really what she was going to do.
Were her other children mixed race?
No.
Okay, so you.
There's a lot of complexity with her journey. I did find her and meet her. I didn't meet her. I found her. She wouldn't meet me.
Wow.
Part of her experience had to do with sexual violence in my conception. So we talked twice on the phone. She wouldn't meet me, would give me no information about my birth father. So she then left the planet without me meeting her, which was devastating. But all that to say that, yes, she's white. Her family, extended family's white. Her children that she parented are white. And therefore, my birth father
is not right.
Yeah, and I've done the 23andMe and the ancestry and all that
You didn't
stuff.
need to do that.
I did not, but now I know.
Called me.
What
I
the
would have
brown
told
is.
you,
Right.
April, you're black.
Exactly.
I would just told you that.
And I've always felt that way. I've always looked in the mirror and saw a person of color. I never, even with my white family, which is, I have to give them lots of credit because they did not, do a lot of the things that were culturally relevant to me. However, they did teach me how to love myself and look at myself. So, and I never saw a white person. I never wanted to be white.
So
ever.
how does that work? All right, because I this week I interviewed Maya Rupert, who is the campaign manager for Julian Castro, and she was raised in an all-white neighborhood where she was the only black child, she and her sister, in this neighborhood, in the school system, and she could not see it. While she said she's very, to be in that space is difficult, to not want to not see Sophia Chang, who's an Asian American, or Asian Toronto, she's from Canada, Asian Canadian who's living here, said that she grew up wanting to be white because that was the standard of beauty and that was the standard of excellence and that was the standard that we are indoctrinated into, all of us, right?
That's right.
So how could you not grow up in a home with people that you love, with siblings that you love, in a school system and not see yourself through that lens and not devalue the blackness?
It has to do with something that my parents did to give me this space to love myself. And I can't put my finger exactly on it. There was just some kind of a self-confidence that I was raised with that didn't really have much to do with the cultural elements. It was just like a confidence and a self-love that. So it's really interesting because the minute I could, I moved to Harlem. The minute I could, and that's where I've been for 20 some odd years.
The blackest place on the planet.
Right. And that felt really good to me. So, and there's nothing wrong with being white. It's just that that's not how I saw myself. And yes, I was frustrated when my mom didn't do my hair the way I wanted.
Let's talk about that for a
Yeah,
second.
that's a big deal.
April Dinwoodie is here. She's a writer. She has a podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
Born in June, raised in April.
Born in June, raised in April.
My birth mother named me June at birth. My adoptive parents named me April. They did not know I was already June, and I'm born in October. So my whole narrative is held in this idea of born in June, raised in April, because as a transracially adopted person, the calendar for me is very different. My birthday adds added layers. Mother's Day, Father's Day, even Thanksgiving, when you look around that table and you see all white faces and no mirrors. I mean, so I talk a lot about the calendar.
That just really messes things up, the pumpkin pie. I'm sorry, Smith. 866-801-8255. It's true though. No sweet potato pie. Your whole upbringing. I know that there was no
No,
sweet
there
potato
was
pie
no
after
sweet
April
potato.
at your
It was
table.
pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin
And it
pie.
was delicious. I'm not going to lie. It was really good. But that's so true. So, these things were obvious, and hair was a big deal. And I have to say that, one of the transformational moments with my mother, who I love and adore, and she's just everything to me, was when we were driving in the car. She had just read a book about a white woman who was raising her child that was biracial like me, but the father was not in the picture. She did everything. She read about this woman doing everything to get her hair right and her culture right. And she said to me, April, I'm sorry I didn't do that for you. And I was a grown up, and I immediately was like, Mom, it's okay. Like, and her just admitting that was so transformational. It's like no parent gets it right. It's obvious and urgent within these constructs of transracial adoption that we lean into what we're doing in service to our kids. But I know she did her best. I get that. And now the work that I do is helping parents to not make the same mistakes my parents made, and not to indict my parents and not to make them feel less than, but to honor the complexity of our life.
They're your parents.
That's exactly right.
So as I was reading about your story, it triggers me when I walk down the street and I see, particularly in New York, you'll see this a lot. You'll see two white guys with a black child, and I'm triggered. Like I want to go rescue the child. I don't know why. I'm sure, but the alternative is that child would be raised in foster care, or their child could be in a home that doesn't. I struggle with this. I rather a child have a home with people who love them, even if they don't quite see them, even if they don't quite understand all of the things that will make them who they're going to be, than to be than the language in a system that is so institutionalized that it will devalue them on so many other levels. How many months or weeks did you spend in foster care?
Several months, probably about 6 or 7 months. And that was a time where I think I was taken good care of. It seems that I was.
Well, you couldn't remember,
right? No, of course not. Yeah, right. So that's the interesting. Well, my cognitively I can't, but the body remembers, right? Like my mom tells a story of me coming to their family. I'd be playing in my crib, very happy, playing and up. She would walk in the door early on, and I would scream and look at her and scream. And I said, oh my gosh, that's so awful. As a grown up now, I'm like, oh, I never want my mom to feel bad. I was like, well, what'd you do? She said, I kept coming in the room. And one day you smiled at me. And I thought, and this idea of just, she kept coming in the room. She was not going anywhere. She did. So
by yourself, you were great.
Pardon?
By yourself, you were great. You were happy.
Yes.
As soon as someone came in the room, there was a problem.
It was a stranger to me. Her her smell wasn't the right smell. It wasn't the right, she didn't look right. And then I had already had that, sort of disconnection from my birth mother, having those 9 months with her, hearing her, smelling her in her body.
She did have you for a minute?
No, but 9 months gestation.
Like in her body, yes.
Right? So I recognize her voice, her smell, everything. I come out, then I leave her, then I go to foster care, then I come. So, and that's a very short window. Some young people are in foster care far longer than I and move around. So, imagine that change. And that's that descriptor of my mom keeping walking in the room until I smiled is just a tiny little piece of that full experience in terms of what other children go through. And that's sort of how the work has shifted for me. It's like, take everything that I've lived and try to make it better. I'm triggered too when I see what you see in terms of two white men with a child of color with them. And it's all about like raising the bar. Like it's okay for them to have that baby, right? But like, what are they doing in service to that baby's culture? And are they honoring his family of origin? Are they bringing that family into their home?
It feels fetishish, and I know, like when I watch these celebrities, they have to have the colors of Benetton in their family, and and while again they're providing a life for children. When I think about Zahara and all of or little Louis, Sandy Bullock's child, or Charlize Theron's child, who's now transgendered at like 6, and I'm confused by everything. But I mind my business. I try to mind my business, April. But I have opinions, and I feel some way about this because we're talking about children. And when you talk about identity, which we started off the show, we were talking about Watchmen. I don't know if you're watching Watchmen, but who we are, is not necessarily tied. Actually, I was talking about Jersey City and the Hebrew Israelites and this whole, like, you're not legitimate. I'm legitimate. You're not legitimate. So then you have to go. You were born June, didn't know your name. You could have known your name in 6 months. When did you find out that was your name?
As a grown up.
As a grown up. Okay. Your parents named you April, which is weird, right? Because you were born in October. Why did they name you April?
They just like the name.
It's a pretty name. I was born in April. I could have been in April.
Yes.
But your identity is not attached to your name. Apparently, your identity is not even attached to your birth mother, even though she's not here anymore. You didn't get to have a relationship with her. You share DNA. But who April Dinwoodie is not attached to that either. So who are you? Like, how do you find yourself?
It's all of it. It's basically all of it, right? That makes me this human being that I can go anywhere. Like I can go at high, low, you name it. You could really take me anywhere, and I will find a way to connect. I will find a way to make myself safe, because I had to make myself safe throughout my entire life. I had to find safety. So I talk about the emotional, the psychological, and the physical safety of kids of color, especially those that are growing up in families that are white. And that means that I had to anchor myself to safe places, individuals, people, spaces in school. And the place that I felt the safest was the principal's office. And the irony of that is that our principal of our grammar school was an adoptive dad, and no one in our community knew it. They didn't reveal that they had adopted children until much later in the children's lives, but he saw me, and he was a great place of safety for me. So I had to create my own safety in a lot of ways. Sometimes it was through fantasy, through reading my Disney books. There were ways in which I found like solace and safety that my family couldn't provide, not because they didn't love me, but because they didn't even have the knowledge of this idea of adoption and how that would form my identity.